Philip, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me back on, Elijah. It's good to see you again.
All right. Now, the first topic I'd like to discuss is a lot of some mainstream sources are now talking about a recession. Bloomberg just reported that 2/3 of U.S. business economists see a recession coming by the end of 2020. Also, the New York Post talked about how some people are looking for a recession coming soon that could be worse than the Great Depression. And this was specifically Peter Schiff in that article. But yeah, what is your perspective on it? It seems like the mainstream recognizing, hey, there might be a recession coming soon.
Well, Peter Schiff was right, and Peter Schiff will be right again. The laws of economics still apply to the United States. Those haven't gone away. It's almost like, I'm a dad of 2 young boys, and it seems like my main job is going around and warning them about the things that are imminently about to happen. Hold the railing while you go down the stairs, be careful on the bicycle, don't push your brother off that ledge, things like that. And it seems like memories are short in financial markets in the United States, and 2008 is a distant memory, and people think that that can never happen again. But the fact of the matter is, not only can it happen again, but it's going to happen again. And I think it's going to be a lot worse because we didn't embrace fiscal restraints, smart monetary policies, and really some of the things that made the United States great: austerity, being willing to live within your own means, things like that. I mean, this has already been the longest economic expansion probably in U.S. history. If it's not number one, it's number 2. So it's going to come to an end. When it comes to an end, I think it's going to be very difficult because we are not only experiencing unprecedented financial hysteria, but we also have a culture war going on at the exact same time. So I think this is a recipe for a depression ahead, which I've been calling it. I borrowed that from Doug Casey. It's not like I made that up on my own, but I always borrow all my best ideas from all the smart people that you interview. And I really think that's what's coming, and that's why it's more important than ever to follow basic financial principles. And so, the recession or depression is right around the corner. And even though you interview people almost every day about this topic, and I know you get a lot of trolls just like I do, say, you guys have been talking about this for years. I think it's more important to talk about it now than ever before, especially when the market's down over 600 points as of this interview. And maybe it'll be down 1,000 by the time we finish it here today, Elijah.
Yeah, I mean, and what is your perspective on that? It seems like the stock market, just recently hit new highs, but yeah, now today we're seeing it down about 2% as we speak, more than 500 points. So,
well, this is a stock market bubble. It always has been. It was a bubble before President Trump was elected. He called it right in that famous debate with Hillary, and I guess someone got his mind right. I mean, and I don't mean this as a slight, but I will say this. Our President Trump, even prior to becoming president, he had a long record of hyping things up that ultimately didn't work out quite the way he promised, whether it was his Atlantic City hotels or any reality show he was on. Some of them did live up to the hype, but the promises as president are not going to live up to that hype. And that's because you cannot oppose the laws of economics indefinitely. You can't have 10 years of 0% interest rates and quantitative easing and suddenly remove the bond buying and the purchasing of toxic assets and raise interest rates and expect everything to work out just fine. So I think he's unfortunately going to be the Hoover of our time. And I was writing to some of my Patreons in my Kennedy Financial Elite Facebook page, and I had a quote posted there yesterday from a documentary that I watched from the BBC about the Great Depression, and they said in 1928 the market increased by 50%. Well, where else have we seen that? In the last year and a half, 2 years since the president was elected, the market's up 50%. And for those of us that have been on the sideline, we've really struggled. It's very tempting to say, well, maybe everyone else was right and I was wrong. But the fact is we are still right. whether it's the stock market or a Ponzi scheme, they always play out the same way ultimately. And that's why it's more important than ever to listen to your show, because we need to listen to this message repeatedly. Otherwise, we're going to forget that this is not a real economy. This is a phony economy based on cheap money, artificially low interest rates, quantitative easing, and no president can fix that. And unfortunately, I think Trump will be the Hoover of our time when this is all over.
Now, when you're talking about the stock market being a bubble, what are some of the things that people can, maybe the actual fundamentals that people can look to that actually show that? So why do you say that it is actually a bubble?
Well, I would probably refer them to some of the other great minds that you have on your show. But when you talk about things like the CAPE and the Shiller ratio and all those other things, it's evident based on any historical precedent that this market is one of the biggest stock market bubbles of all time. And just, going back to the fact, like I just said, we have to go back to the Great Depression to see a market go up 50% in this short amount of time, on top of what it had already done during the previous 8 years. So you really don't have to be a PhD economist or work on Wall Street to understand these things. Fact is that this is all based on a fraud. It's not going to work. And I think that's ultimately what we can be excited about when this is all over, is that this may be the end of the belief in Keynesian economics when this is all said and done here in the United States. It'll never go away permanently because politicians always want to promise something for nothing, and that's never going to go away. So, you'll find other countries throughout the world that unfortunately will adopt these same foolish policies down the road. But I think this is it, man. This is it for the dollar. This is it for the credibility of Keynesian economics, and good riddance to all that.
Now, when it comes to the individual person, you've talked about a lot in your show about the importance of budgeting and saving. And you're saying right now it is more important than ever. So what is that? Why do you say that? And what does that actually look like for the average person?
Well, I think it's almost like getting ready for a fight. I told people I would never admit this in public, but I'll do it right now. One of the podcasts I enjoy from time to time is Dan Bongino, and he's a former Secret Service agent and a amateur mixed martial artist, and he's always talking about politics in terms of a fight. And I think that it's always important to be physically fit, potentially to, say, escape a burning building or rescue a loved one or things like that. But it's also in that respect, very important to be financially fit, building those financial muscles so that you can withstand a job loss or some kind of accident or an unexpected debt that you need to have cash for. And it's only in good times that you can begin to develop those financial muscles so that you're ready for potentially, the Greater Depression ahead. I still communicate with relatives, and many of whom are old, and they had a parent who was a product of the Great Depression, and many of them survived based on the things they learned during the 20s. Putting money aside. My grandmother always said saving for a rainy day. All the old same cliches that we've all heard. The ways to get ready for the hard times ahead so they don't feel so hard because you've already instilled austerity in your own home. So just simple things, putting money aside for a rainy day, doing a monthly budget with your loved ones so that you know what's coming in, what's going out, and putting a name on every dollar that you spend. Just all the simple things that I talked about in my free ebook, Financial Judo, a couple of years ago.
Now, you talk about, with saving, if you're saying that the dollar is going to go by the wayside, like, how do people save then? I mean, a lot of people would hear saving and then they think about saving in dollars, but is that going to be a good idea?
Sure. I think you have to have some dollars because unfortunately people on the street are still going to take them. They're still going to believe for a long time that, well, this is what I've always used, so this is still money. We've seen Mark Dice try to give away a candy bar or a silver bar, and which one people ultimately take. Your viewers and listeners are the smart ones. They wouldn't fail that test. They would be encouraging their family, hey, stack silver coins to get ready. Unfortunately, I think, it is important to have a part of your savings in fiat currency, and look no further than Venezuela for that. As much pain as they've been through, many of them are still using the government's fiat. Of course, they've created a black market for it, and the listed prices are not the real ones. But ultimately, they're not using gold, silver, Bitcoin. Many of them are not for daily transactions. So I think it'd be important to have, if you can, $1,000 in cash and $20 bills ready to go, because suddenly ATM machines might not work, or they might put a limitation on the amount of cash you can take out on a day-to-day basis. So I think that would be smart for anybody to just have a little bit of fiat lying around, not a considerable portion of your wealth. Don't expect to ride out the entire crisis just with fiat currency and dollar bills, but definitely 5%, 10% might be wise.
Definitely. And recently on your channel, you've also been talking quite a bit about cryptocurrencies. And I guess, did you want to maybe give us just an introduction into that, and then we can maybe discuss some of the specifics you've been looking at recently?
Sure. So one of the things I remember from going to school, I went to Catholic school all 12 years. And one of the few things I remember from, I'm not sure which grade it was, is that necessity is the mother of invention. So for me, I don't think it's a coincidence that Bitcoin was launched at the beginning of 2009. I think, honestly, it's because of what we had all suffered through, what we witnessed, and what we realized was there is a need for a peer-to-peer electronic cash that everyone can be guaranteed there will only ever be 21 million ever created. Now, sure, it's not perfect. Cryptocurrency is not perfect by any means, but when you compare it to government currencies, there's just so many upsides. So the beauty of cryptocurrency, specifically Bitcoin, is that it's a trustless, immutable accounting information system, meaning you don't need to trust me and I don't need to trust you. We can trust third parties to maintain this ledger, and it's immutable. No one can hack it. It's probably the biggest honeypot in the entire world. No one's ever figured out a way to manipulate the transactions. So me being an accountant, it's like the most beautiful thing I've ever witnessed in my entire life. This is a accounting information system that complements gold and silver and precious metals, because that's the key component that it's lacking. So, again, I go on shows like yours, and I'm always trying to convince gold and silver bugs, hey, this is a good thing. You don't have to love it, but understand that eventually there will be a gold to Bitcoin ratio that kind of stabilizes, and the same for, a silver to Bitcoin ratio that stabilizes. And in the meantime, there's all this chaos and volatility because we're all trying to figure out what exactly is this thing really worth. So I've been encouraging folks, for those who can afford it, maybe no more than 10% of your whole portfolio be allocated towards cryptocurrencies. And I talk about some of the different ones every week on my show, Kennedy Financial.
We were talking before the interview how you were saying it can be kind of risky. So, probably not more than 10%. And obviously we can't give financial advice on this channel, but your opinion, it seems like not to be putting too much into this.
Right. Yeah. And anytime I share facts and figures and numbers, these are all my own opinion. This is what I'm doing. If anyone cares to hear it, there's no hard and fast rule. And frankly, I think it is a new thing. It's an experiment. We can't forget that Bitcoin really is an experiment. I was on one show, Lewis from Small Gold, and he was like, well, can you guarantee me Bitcoin will be around in 10 years? And I was like, of course not. But the one thing I am willing to guarantee you is that I think cryptocurrency will be around in 10 years. And it's not for the faint of heart. I personally have watched my crypto portfolio fall by more than 50%, but I also got to enjoy the gains of seeing things like Litecoin go up 4,000%. So this is kind of the risk reward that one can see with crypto. And the beauty of it, Elijah, is you've got many companies, whether it's, goldsilver.com or JM Bullion or goldmoney.com, all willing to accept your cryptocurrency for physical metal, which has never been really done prior to the last 5 years. I'm not sure who the earliest adopter was. So if you get nervous and there's a massive pump in Bitcoin and you're like, now's the time, you can have, a mint case of Silver Igloos delivered to your house from one of these companies. And it's a win-win. You're winning with a currency, and then you're able to use that currency to buy money, gold and silver. I think it's the best thing that's probably ever happened in our lives.
Getting into like the specifics, what are some cryptocurrencies you're looking at right now?
Well, so my favorite right now is Litecoin because it has a long track record against Bitcoin. Charlie Lee created Litecoin in 2011. Since then, you can go back and look at the charts and see the Bitcoin to Litecoin ratio. My opinion is that Litecoin is undervalued right now, and maybe in the next several months, we could potentially see it pump against Bitcoin, and you could get 3 or 4 Bitcoin per one Litecoin as it stands right now. So that's one of my favorites. Also, I talked about EOS today on my show. My opinion, based on the last crypto pump from late December, early January, is that there will be winners like Amazon and Facebook in this market, and there will also be losers like AOL and Pets.com that'll cease to exist because the technology didn't keep up with the demand. So one of the ones that I'm concerned about personally is Ethereum, because I saw what happened to it during the pump, and just simple things like CryptoKitties took over most of the network and brought it to a halt. And so as a result of that, there have been other projects that are building and may potentially replace Ethereum over the long run. And so one of those that some are saying potentially could be the case is EOS. And so I have a good allocation. I'll share with the audience. I have 10% of my crypto portfolio allocated to EOS. And a lot of smart guys are talking about it. I think it has a bright future. So that would be one to take a look at. And if folks follow my show, they can hear me talk about some of the ones that I think have promise in the weeks and months ahead.
Definitely. And can you expand on that, like some of the specifics about why you think that EOS might be a good idea right now?
Well, I think the first and foremost, it had a brilliant creator, probably the Steve Jobs of our time in terms of cryptocurrencies, Dan Larimer. He also created Steemit, so that's a good start. It seems to have gained widespread adoption. Mm-hmm. It has a governance system that's being analyzed. And in fact, today I was talking about my show that some people were becoming concerned about that governance system, and they're coming up with ways to potentially backstop it with tools just like the SEC might use, whistleblower program and things like that. So they're doing all the right things. And the other thing is that it's not based in China. One of the jokes on my show is, if it's a coin or a pump that has anything to do with China, just avoid it, because it's probably going to be a ripoff in the long run. There's just a lot of shenanigans going on there, and that's just my own rule of thumb. It's not disparaging toward the Chinese or anything, but I lost some money personally from Neo because I thought, hey, well, maybe this is going to be the Chinese replacement to Ethereum. But cryptocurrency is volatile enough. You don't need to intersperse a lot of the wash trading and all the other financial shenanigans that are going on in other parts of the world.
All right. Well, Philip Kennedy, thank you so much for joining.